informative and really honest, and I really appreciate it. And I think that a lot more people should be aware of this because our country is heading for some serious turmoil. Living with their head in the sand, and you guys are great down there. I would definitely like to get on your mailing list and be supportive of Free Speech Television and keep doing the good work and fight the good fight, and I'm all for it 100%.
As the fundraising manager here at Free Speech TV, I'm proud to spread awareness of our small independent network, and I know you are too. Every day you send us encouragement and motivation to keep protecting the First Amendment. We are humbled by your passion to keep our network alive, and in return, we've got your back with daily news discussions and programs. So long as we have your support, our Free Speech TV network will continue to exist. Not only will we keep moving forward, we will expand our platform with new coverage of historical, progressive events like the Poor People's Campaign and new daily shows like The Aware Show by Lisa Garr. If you have not yet had a chance to donate this summer quarter, please call 877-378-8669 or visit us online at freespeech.org. With a $20 donation right now, you will receive a Free Speech TV bumper sticker and a mystery gift. This could be anything from an eye-opening progressive DVD, documentary, or a Free Speech TV ball cap. It's a mystery. It's a fun way for us to say thank you for your support. If you're hoping to do more to keep our independent network financially stable, consider a sustaining monthly donation of any amount. Monthly sustainers are extremely vital to our existence. As a new $20 monthly sustainer, you will receive the full Free Speech TV mystery package. This limited time offer will include 4 of our most popular gifts. You could receive a Free Speech TV water bottle, books by well-known progressive authors like Noam Chomsky, lapel pins, DVDs, and more. Free Speech TV is truly independent, meaning we set our own agenda and we rely on you. We believe that each one of us deserves access to accurate information with integrity at its heart. Call 877-378-8669 or donate online at freespeech.org.
Hi, I'm Emilio Estevez, and I'm a fan of Stephanie Miller, Tom Hartman, David Pakman, and Democracy Now! Join me in supporting independent media and stand with Free Speech TV. Keep watching, keep moving forward, keep Free Speech TV powered by the people.
My name's Andrea Mercado from New Florida Majority, and I believe in the power of women of color in this election cycle because for too long we're the people who power elections. We're the ones who are in community organizations, talking to our neighbors, going door to door. But the issues that we face, the issues that we believe in, are often ignored by presidential candidates. And in this election cycle, women of color are coming together around the country in a powerful effort called She the People to elevate our voices and to demand that presidential candidates speak to the issues that us and our families care about: healthcare, education, racial equity, a women's right to choose. All of these immigration policies, all of these issues are issues that impact our communities, and for too long, our votes are critical in every election, but our voices and our issues are ignored. And I think women of color are coming together to say that enough is enough. It's time for presidential candidates to address the issues that we care about, the issues that our families are facing, and for us to come together and raise our voices. And She the People has been a powerful gathering of women of color from around the country who are doing the work in communities, in small towns, in big cities, and who are raising our voices, Black and brown, indigenous and API, and we're so excited to see the power of women of color in this election in 2020.
Thank you for watching Free Speech TV. More importantly, thank you for supporting us at a time when the press is under attack by the highest office in the land, branded as the enemy of the people. Thank you for supporting us at a time when newsrooms are being emptied out and other media outlets are closing shop. Times are tough for the media, but with your support, Free Speech TV is here for the long haul. I helped found this network in 1995, but it is you, our viewers, who have made all this possible. Democracy Now!, Tom Hartman, Stephanie Miller, Sonali Kolhatkar, David Pacman, Gay USA, Pirate TV, Economic Update, and more. 24/7 in millions of homes across this land, all because of your support. Free Speech TV is nonprofit, commercial-free, and thanks to you, fiercely independent. Unlike other networks, we're not owned by billionaires, corporations, or any government. Viewer support keeps us unbought and uncompromised. Please call us now at 877-378-8669 or donate online at freespeech.org. Our goal is 50 donors this hour, so every gift counts. Monthly contributions are particularly helpful and easier on your pocketbook. Our staff of 17 will stretch every dollar to beam the light of truth into 40 million homes every day. Many of you call or write us with your grave concerns about the deep moral crisis our country faces today. It's unacceptable that in the richest nation in the world, 140 million Americans lack sufficient food, shelter, or health care. That's nearly half of us. This is neither acceptable nor inevitable. Eradicating systemic poverty, racism, ecological devastation, and the war economy is the goal of the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival. Thanks to our generous donors, Free Speech TV was able to broadcast the birth of this powerful national movement, and we pledge to continue covering the organizing now happening across 40 states to build power from the bottom up. Friends, we can't do this without you. Let's cry loud for justice. Let's amplify the voices of impacted people. Let's support those working on the front lines, and let's join them there. Call 877-378-8669 or donate online at freespeech.org. Thank you so much.
Come on, rise up. Rise up. Come on and rise up. Rise up. Come on and rise up. Rise up. Come on and rise
Hi, I'm Emilio Estevez, and I love Free Speech TV because it's emblematic of what free for all means. It's emblematic of what media should embrace, which is the facts. And I know that when I want fact-based information, I turn to Free Speech TV.
From KPFK Pacifica Radio in Los Angeles, this is Rising Up with Sonali, and I'm your host, Sonali Kolhatkar. We're online at risingupwithsonali.com. In today's news headlines, President Donald Trump invoked his executive privilege on Wednesday over documents requested by the House Oversight and Reform Committee regarding the 2020 census. Committee Chair Elijah Cummings had subpoenaed documents about the Trump administration's decision-making behind including a citizenship question on the next census, but Attorney General William Barr had refused to turn them over. Now, with Trump's invocation of executive privilege, the DOJ has the legal cover it needs to defy the committee's subpoena. Mr. Cummings asked what is being hidden and cited Trump's move as another example of the administration's blanket defiance of Congress's constitutionally mandated responsibilities. The Oversight and Reform Committee was scheduled to vote to hold Barr and Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross in contempt of Congress on Wednesday morning, but postponed the vote to later in the day. On Tuesday, the House voted to authorize committees to sue officials who defy subpoenas. The vote passed 229 to 191 along party lines. The House Judiciary Committee plans to sue officials over documents related to the special counsel's report on 2016 election wrongdoing. Committee Chair Gerald Nadler acknowledged this has not been done before, but neither have we ever seen blanket stonewalling by the administration of all information requests by the House. We must go to court to enforce the subpoenas. Two former FBI officials, Robert Anderson and Stephanie Douglas, testified to the House Intelligence Committee on Wednesday about their opinions on Robert Mueller's report. Committee Chair Adam Schiff said this during his opening remarks.
Yet Mueller's report provides no evaluation of the counterintelligence concerns raised by these facts and others. Of all the questions that Mueller helped resolve, he left many critical questions unanswered. What happened to the counterintelligence investigation? Were there other forms of compromise like money laundering left out, uninvestigated, or referred to other offices? Were individuals granted security clearances that shouldn't have? And are there individuals still operating in the administration that leave America vulnerable? We are determined to find out.
That's House Intelligence Committee Chair Adam Schiff on Wednesday. According to AP, the two ex-FBI leaders that testified said the Mueller report, quote, showed Russian efforts to vet and test Trump campaign associates, to establish back channels of communications, and to spread their contacts around in hopes of maximizing their chances of getting what they wanted. Mr. Anderson said it's an absolute classic trade craft of Russia and Russian intelligence services. They'll never have one point of failure. Meanwhile, the president's son, Donald Trump Jr., testified behind closed doors to the Senate Intelligence Committee on Wednesday, the second time his presence was requested. When asked if he was concerned that Democrats might accuse him of perjury during a previous testimony, Trump Jr. said he was, quote, not at all worried, and that there was, quote, nothing to change about his testimony. The watchdog agency of the U.S. Health and Human Services has issued a scathing report drawing attention to thousands of cases of neglect or abuse of seniors on Medicare at nursing homes that went unreported. According to AP, in 2016, about 6,600 cases reflected potential neglect or abuse that was not reported as required. Nearly 6,200 patients were affected. The report found 1 in 5 high-risk hospital ER Medicare claims for treatment provided in calendar year 2016 were the result of potential abuse or neglect, including injury of unknown source. The Trump administration plans on holding migrant children at a facility in Oklahoma that once served as a Japanese internment camp during World War II. Fort Sill is an Army base near Oklahoma City, and according to the Department of Health and Human Services, it would be used as, quote, a temporary emergency influx shelter for about 1,400 migrant and refugee children. Meanwhile, an enterprising Washington Post photographer on Tuesday captured Trump's highly touted deal with Mexico to stem the flow of refugees northward. Here's Trump speaking to reporters on Tuesday, waving around a folded piece of paper.
That's the agreement that everybody says I don't have. So, no, because I'm going to let Mexico do the announcement at the right time. From Mexico, they want to go through, but here's the agreement. It's a very simple agreement. This is one page. This is one page of a very long and very good agreement for both Mexico and the United States.
That's Trump on Tuesday speaking to reporters about his secret immigration deal with Mexico, waving around a document that was then photographed. The House Ways and Means Committee is holding a hearing on Medicare for All on Wednesday. Ahead of the hearing, Representative Pramila Jayapal, who introduced a Medicare for All bill, posted a video together with Representative Deb Dingell about the importance of the bill and the hearing.
It's time for Medicare for All.
We are so excited to be the original lead sponsors of the Expanded and Improved Medicare for All Act of 2019.
Every American in this country's got a right to quality, affordable health care. And for too many Americans, it's not happening.
Guaranteed health insurance, that's what we're talking about. This is the #1 pocketbook issue across the country. And so the bill that we've introduced has 113 co-sponsors. We're about to have the third hearing in a month. The most important thing about the Ways and Means hearing is that it is one of the 2 major committees of jurisdiction.
That's Representatives Pramila Jayapal and Deb Dingell ahead of a hearing on Medicare for All at the House Ways and Means Committee. But committee chair Richard Neal had said that he did not want the words Medicare for All to be mentioned at the hearing, preferring instead universal health care or universal health coverage. Mr. Neal has long opposed Medicare for All and is a recipient of donations from the health insurance industry. A white man in North Carolina has pleaded guilty to the killing of 3 Muslim students at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill in 2015. Craig Hicks pleaded guilty to 3 counts of first-degree murder for the killings of 23-year-old Dia Barakat, his 21-year-old wife Yusra Abu Salha, and her 19-year-old sister Razan Abu Salha. Mr. Hicks said, "I've wanted to plead guilty since day one." In international news, a militia group being linked to Iran is being held responsible for firing a missile at an airport in Saudi Arabia that injured 26 civilians. According to the Wall Street Journal, the Saudi-led coalition said the projectile struck an arrivals hall at Abha Airport in the southern part of the kingdom in what it said was a deliberate targeting of civilians that could amount to a war crime. Meanwhile, U.S. lawmakers at the House Foreign Affairs Committee on Wednesday grilled U.S. State Department officials over the Trump administration's decision to finalize arms sales to Saudi Arabia over congressional disapproval. And Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe is making a historic trip to Tehran this week to meet with Iranian leaders in an effort to diffuse tensions between the U.S. and Iran. And finally, protests have continued in Hong Kong by civil rights groups and students over a deeply unpopular extradition bill that would give greater Chinese control over the island. Thousands of people on Tuesday engaged in sit-ins and other acts of civil disobedience, while Hong Kong authorities fired tear gas at them. And that does it for our news headlines today. By the way, the Rising Up crew will be on vacation for a couple of weeks and will be back live close to the end of June. We'll be rebroadcasting some of our most popular interviews while we're gone. And now stay tuned for the rest of today's show after this break.
Just like Free Speech TV, Rising Up with Sonali is a 501c3 nonprofit fueled by grassroots donors. Our partnership means we are accountable to our mission and you, not to anyone else. This is the real news mainstream media doesn't want you to know. Donating to Free Speech TV brings power back to the people. Keep watching. Stay educated and stay organized on the front lines. Call 877-378-8669 or donate online at freespeech.org.
From KPFK Pacifica Radio, this is Rising Up with Sonali, and I'm your host, Sonali Kolhatkar. You can watch this program on Free Speech TV and listen to it on Pacifica radio stations and affiliates nationwide. While the Trump administration is lauding its success in strong-arming Mexico to militarize its response to northward migration, there is no acknowledgement on the government's part to understand what drives migrants to the U.S. or how poorly the U.S. treats them when they are here. 2 new reports by Physicians for Human Rights attempts to shed light on these untold parts of the story. First, there is no one here to protect you. Trauma among children fleeing violence in Central America is a report detailing the horrific violence that children face in countries like Honduras and El Salvador. Second, not in my exam room, how U.S. immigration enforcement is obstructing medical care is a report highlighting what the New York Times and other outlets have begun reporting on, how Border Patrol and other immigration enforcement authorities are endangering migrant patients receiving health care in the U.S. My guest is Catherine Hampton. She coordinates the Asylum Network program that drives migration to the U.S. We've heard that there are record numbers of unaccompanied minors that are reaching the U.S. border. What your report points out is almost too difficult to imagine in terms of the violence they face. Can you give us a sense of what it is these children are fleeing in from Central America?
Yeah, I think in the U.S. right now, it's the demographic change is very clear to everyone. We all recognize that rising numbers of whether unaccompanied minors or children coming with their family members are arriving at the U.S.-Mexico border. And a question that we've all been asking ourselves is, why are they coming to the U.S.? And that's been the topic of many policy debates. And so we undertook this research to do a deep dive and really do a scientific analysis of forensic evaluations of children and adolescents seeking asylum in the U.S. to really uncover their reasons for fleeing their home country. And what PHR's medical experts found is that actually among the children in our study, 78% of them experienced direct physical violence, including aggravated assault with blunt instruments, sometimes with firearms. 18% were subject to sexual violence. 58% were witness to a horrific act of violence, including their parents being killed in front of them, family members mutilated. So the extreme harms and the extreme violence that children were fleeing really help us to understand that, in many cases, children are not just coming to the U.S. Voluntarily out of choice, but really because they have no other option. Another section of our report talks about the failure of state protection. So children recounted times when they would try to go to the police to receive help and protection, and police members would either actively abuse them or completely ignore the crimes that had been committed against them, refuse to investigate. Children reported gang infiltration into police being intimidated by gang members and not investigating crimes against children. The children who our experts evaluated really came from very extreme situations, and that those findings really need to impact our policy response.
So that means the children that are arriving at the border are arriving with deep trauma, a lot of mental trauma, I imagine, and probably even some physical trauma. And then they have to contend with the U.S. immigration system, which under Trump in the last 2 years has become so much harsher.
Absolutely. The clinical findings among the children that we evaluated showed that 3/4 of the children had a major mental health diagnosis, most commonly PTSD, but also depression and anxiety disorder. And so when you look at the stories of what these children have survived, when you look at their mental health diagnosis, the last thing that would occur to anyone is to say, oh, these are children who need to be detained indefinitely, supported from their primary caretaker. It's just not a logical policy response.
And so, how exactly did this? What was this report based on? How did you get access to children, and what sort of assessments were conducted?
So, Physicians for Human Rights Asylum Program actually has a 30-year history, and our clinicians have conducted thousands of these forensic evaluations, which are based on the Istanbul Protocol, which is the UN standard for documenting torture and persecution. So we have more than 1,400 clinicians around the country who are trained in the Istanbul Protocol standards, and they know how to document psychological and physical after effects of torture and persecution. So they work with attorneys who represent these children to prepare a medical legal affidavit, which is used in the client's case. So the 183 cases that we looked at were expert evaluations of clinicians who did a full patient history, who completed either medical or mental health diagnoses depending on the trauma symptoms that the child was presenting with. So these are really, it's not just kind of a guesstimate, it's really based on the children that were surveyed. It's really an expert diagnosis by clinicians who are specifically trained, who have a lot of experience working with asylum seekers, and have very considerable expertise, especially in working with children, which is a particularly challenging type of evaluation.
So then the results of what you found these children are going through, do they meet the standards for asylum that the United States has agreed to, an international framework on asylum that the U.S. has agreed to and should, under international law, be, accepting asylum claims for?
So asylum, the standard for asylum is very high. And at Physicians for Human Rights, we affirm that standard. So we're not saying, every single person deserves to receive asylum. Asylum is for someone who has a well-founded fear of persecution based on one of 5 protected grounds: race, religion, nationality, political opinion, particular social group. It's someone who has either persecuted by the government or by a group the government is unable or unwilling to control. So this is a very high bar. But I think what's really crucial for us to always reaffirm is due process. So these children have complex stories. Our findings show that children were subject to multiple forms of trauma by multiple perpetrators, extremely complex and severe forms of harm that really need to be evaluated individually and by trained professionals.
Now, are these just unaccompanied?
Measure has been struck down in the courts as unconstitutional. However, there are reports that the government continues to separate families. And so that's something that really, as a practice, it must stop. It's illegal, it's unconstitutional. It's a violation of civil and political rights of children to have.
Healthcare obstructed by Border Patrol agents who refused to leave the room when she was receiving treatment. She had early onset labor. And recently, Rewire.News had a similar set of stories that they found, not Border Patrol, but U.S. Marshal Service doing the same sort of thing, shackling pregnant women. So tell us about this report. How widespread is this practice? Because if these migrants are coming to the U.S. with physical or mental health issues, many of them are likely ending up receiving needed medical care. And now we find out that the enforcement agents are so zealous in their desire to detain these migrants that they are in some ways obstructing the medical care.
Yeah, so this policy brief is based on about 60 interviews that I and other colleagues conducted in California, Arizona, and Texas in different cities. And it was really reflecting the concerns of healthcare providers that we spoke to who face situations where they ask for a Border Patrol agent to unshackle basically a dying patient, a patient dying of metastatic cancer, an HIV patient with severe dehydration to the point of organ failure. And not only did the Border Patrol agent refuse to unshackle the person, but also refused to give any justification why someone who is so physically weak needed to be under 5-point shackles or some kind of restraints, which don't allow for the doctor to provide the treatment that they're, trying to give to this person to help them. So I think this is this issue, just as we see with children and family separation, where security policies, which are, a necessary part of our law.
Imagine that some of the doctors that are in these situations might find that this is a new experience for them. They're trying to treat somebody who clearly needs medical care. And meanwhile, they have these agents, either Border Patrol or other law enforcement, immigration law enforcement agents, in the room with them. Do doctors even know what their rights are? And so what do you recommend needs to happen?
Yeah, so I fully recommend for all physicians and other health professionals to be fully informed about patient rights, about their own rights as a provider to offer ethical, evidence-based care, because that is one of the problems, is that we do have existing legal standards and policy guidelines that can really protect the rights of patients, but if they're not well known and they're not implemented properly, then we face these kind of dangerous situations where people's health is really being put at risk. So, for example, the Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act, this is a federal legislation which states that, everyone is entitled to receive emergency medical care, life-saving assistance, regardless of their ability to pay or their immigration status. So that's something that we already have enshrined in our laws. And both Immigration and Customs Enforcement and Customs and Border Protection have a policy called the Sensitive Locations Policy, where they recognize that immigration enforcement should not take place in hospitals, because hospitals are a place where we need to care for patients. So that's not the place to arrest someone if they're receiving chemotherapy or they're receiving some kind of very critical treatment or surgery. And so we really need for ICE and CBP to reaffirm the sensitive locations policy to ensure that all of their agents are trained and are fully implementing the policy, so that we can have enforcement, but enforcement which isn't sacrificing people's lives and their health.
So in your report, you bring up this idea of a sanctuary hospital. We've heard of sanctuary cities, we've heard of sanctuary churches. What is a sanctuary hospital?
So a sanctuary hospital is a safe space where patients don't have to be afraid that they're going to be targeted for enforcement when they're receiving care. And it's just a space where doctors and other healthcare providers are free to offer treatment according to their ethical and specialty, standards, and where patients' rights are also fully protected. So that can look different ways, but I think there are many ways for hospital policies to really reaffirm those existing legal rights and to show providers exactly how they can ensure that patient rights are protected.
Give out a website, Catherine, where people can find out more. I understand that on Physicians for Human Rights' website, there's a petition people can sign.
Absolutely. So if you go to phr.org, that's our website, and there's a drop-down menu under Take Action. And so we have a number of actions where you can contact representatives in Congress, you can contact the Department of Homeland Security. So we have online forums where you can easily just write in your own personal message on the topics of child detention, family separation, and send in your inputs to our policymakers.
We link to that from our website. Catherine, good luck to you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks so much.
My guest has been Catherine Hampton. She coordinates the Asylum Network program at the group Physicians for Human Rights. Again, that website is phr.org. She is co-authored both of the reports that we were just discussing. I'm Sonali Kolhatkar. We're online at risingupwithsonali.com, where you can sign up for our daily newsletter, subscribe to our video channel on Vimeo, and find our audio podcast on iTunes and Spotify. From KPFK Pacifica Radio, this is Rising Up with Sonali, and I'm your host, Sonali Kolhatkar. You can watch this program on Free Speech TV and listen to it on Pacifica radio stations and affiliates nationwide. Activists demanding Medicare for All disrupted the annual meeting of the American Medical Association on Saturday in Chicago. Dozens of members of groups like People's Action filed into the conference as the opening session began. They conducted a die-in, sharing their heartbreaking stories of being unable to access proper medical care, and demanded that the nation's leading physicians group support the call for Medicare for All. The AMA has aligned itself with an anti-Medicare for All lobbying group called Partnership for America's Healthcare Future, a group that has spent more than $100 million in propaganda efforts to undermine Medicare for All, despite its growing popularity. My guest is Connie Nguyen. She is the Healthcare for All campaign director with People's Action. She was at the AMA meeting on Saturday. Welcome to the program, Connie.
Thank you, Sonali.
So first, why is it that you you and your organization chose the AMA meeting as your venue for confronting this organization?
Well, first of all, so People's Action led the die-in in the meeting, but this was actually an effort being called by not only People's Action, but a coalition of community groups, a coalition that consisted of doctors, of patients, of people directly impacted by our healthcare crisis, of nurses. And so the AMA specifically was the venue because the AMA has historically opposed single-payer healthcare and upheld medical apartheid in our country for decades. So this was brought to light in the 60s through the Poor People's Campaign led by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And so with the annual meeting that the AMA was holding this year, it was time to call them out again for being on the wrong side of history.
So let's actually take a look at what happened. We have a short video of the more than 20-minute long confrontation, just capturing some of the chants as activists filed into the conference opening session and unfurled their banner.
Nominations and elections, conflict of interest, and
Support Medicare for all! AMA! 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 Support Medicare for all! Medicare for all! Patient need not corporate greed! Patient need not corporate greed! They don't care if people die! Health insurance is a lie! They don't care if people die! Health insurance is a lie!
That is a short video of the confrontation that took place between activists on Saturday and the AMA. It was actually a disruption of the AMA conference, the annual conference. So, Connie, I understand that there were people that were participating who shared their stories of what had happened to them and how the current system has failed them. Can you give us a sense of some of those stories?
Yes, absolutely. So, I mean, you know, and these are exactly the people who are driving the movement and, you know, amplifying the call for a single-payer Medicare for all system in our country. And I do want you to know, Sonali, that most of the people that spoke in that disruption were people who have been impacted by, again, our healthcare system and the broken nature of it for decades. These are seniors who are members of Jane Addams Senior Caucus, who have seen and experienced the real-life devastating impact of not only in their own lives and their own health, but the impacts of our healthcare system on the lives of their friends and of their family. For instance, Jackie Reynolds, who grew up in Chicago, where the AMA is headquartered. She grew up in a community where Black and brown children are confronted with systemic violence. And so Jackie herself has lived with post-traumatic stress her entire life. And even as an adult now and as a senior, she still struggles to access the mental health care she needs to restore her health from all of those decades of trauma. Also, John Johnson, or also known as JJ, has lived with chronic health conditions for 30 years. He retired from his job at Amtrak and had to wait 3 years after he retired before he was eligible for Medicare or disability. So during that time, he was trying to figure out for 3 years how he was going to take care of his health, how he was going to pay for those services, for his treatments, his medications, and, you know, just living with that stress on top of it all, you know, was a hardship for him. And so he got to tell his story there as well. Also, Lily Young, who is a senior, who is on a fixed income of $16,000 a year, but has to pay $10,000 before her insurance will cover any of her care.
So it's a deductible?
Yes, an out-of-pocket cost. So deductibles, co-insurance, all of the many different things.
The premiums, right? The co-payments,
right.
et cetera, yeah.
Exactly. So unfortunately, it's not a clean line in terms of what it is, or very clear. But for the bottom line for her, it's $10,000 a year of her $16,000 income before her insurance pays for anything. There were also doctors there who know very well and have heard from other doctors and colleagues about the frustrations with the current health insurance system, how complicated it is, how much time they spend chasing authorizations, following up with billing and claims, and that takes away from their ability to care for patients, right? And then also doctors who have witnessed patients who have passed away from their conditions, while awaiting approval and all of that from their health insurance.
So, Connie, how did the AMA respond? These were, of course, individual members, I'm assuming, who witnessed what happened. Were they sort of confused? Or did they react negatively or positively?
There was a mixture of response, Sonali. Our message was to the leadership of the AMA, and this was the opening ceremony of the House of Delegates, where they vote on policies within the AMA. And so as far as the leadership, they were fairly silent. They did acknowledge that we had a right to make our voices and heard, but at the same time, they said that they had a right to conduct their business. So essentially telling us that their business took precedence over the stories and the lives of people experiencing the healthcare crisis that we are in right now. As far as the membership, they've got a membership or a House of Delegates of 650 people. In addition to that, there were other members who were there to observe. And we definitely got a mixture of response. Including applause, including a standing ovation, including some love on social media from people who posted out photos and comments from the actions. So I think that, there's definitely a clear disconnect between the leadership of the AMA and what they are supporting and funding, right? And what the actual body and physicians and doctors and students who are members of the AMA actually want to see.
Right. This is the largest association of physicians in the United States, possibly the oldest as well. And their mission is to promote the art and science of medicine and the betterment of public health. So they've aligned with the Partnership for America's Healthcare Future, which if you go to that organization's website, it's hard to tell that it's a lobbying group, and it's hard to tell that it opposes single payer, because I understand that they don't explicitly come out against Medicare for all, and that lobbying group is focused on preserving the Affordable Care Act, but their lobbyists do actively undermine single payer or Medicare for all, right?
Right. In the public, I don't think it would be wise of them for them to come out publicly saying that they're not interested in seeing every American or every person in this country get access to health care, affordable, quality, comprehensive health care. Their message is very much about improving the Affordable Care Act. Unfortunately, right, it's almost been a decade since the Affordable Care Act has passed, and we are still trying to tinker with it. And what we are seeing in our communities is that this is not enough. To share a personal story, I just had a conversation today with a member from our network who committed suicide.
Oh my goodness.
He had diabetes. Yeah, he had diabetes and didn't want to be a burden to his family, and so he took his own life. And this is the reality that people are facing in our communities and the decisions that we are having to make. And so while the Partnership for America's Healthcare Future, funds of, is a well-funded lobby that is playing around with messaging. They're also playing around with people's lives. And so they have talked about, improving the ACA, but that is because they know that in order for us to have a comprehensive, truly equitable, affordable healthcare system, we have to do something about health insurance corporations and the unmatched power that corporations have right now to set the prices and negotiating power for our health industry.
The Intercept last November had a tell-all expose of this organization, the Partnership for America's Healthcare Future, where they found slides that they had obtained showing the behind-the-scenes strategy by this organization that isn't just about improving the ACA, but is about insisting that single payer or Medicare for all be sidelined. And they in these slides they talk about how it's important to cast Medicare for all as something that only the far left supports, that it has minimal political support, and how they are trying to shape the narrative on the issue of Medicare for all. And they are very well funded, hundreds of $143 million of expenses to actively lobby members of Congress. But Medicare for all is continuing to gain popularity, right? It's a bill that's been introduced by Pramila Jayapal in the House, and I understand that it's going to be taken up by the House Ways and Means Committee this Wednesday.
That is correct. So we have a historic day tomorrow. And yes, this speaks to, so your point about the partnership is absolutely correct, Sonali. They do want to cast us as, some far left movement, but the reality is that you can't argue with the real life experiences of so many people in this country that are experiencing hardship, suffering, unnecessary deaths, financial, chaos in their lives. And that's what is important about this movement, right? Is that there are thousands of people who are sharing their stories at, when they find opportunities like at the annual meeting of the AMA, in order for people to understand that this is not a far left idea. This is something that we absolutely need to take care of the health and well-being of our communities, and something that we absolutely can do. Yes, on Wednesday, we have the Ways and Means Committee hearing on our healthcare system. Medicare for All will be very much at the core of this hearing, and this will be the third hearing in 3 months where Medicare for All will be heard in a House committee. And so again, this just speaks to the growing movement behind Medicare for All. It also speaks to the undeniability of the need to address our healthcare crisis in this country, and the fact that Congress is being forced and left without a choice, but to actually give room so that Medicare for All is actually heard.
Give out a website, Connie, where people can find out more about People's Action and your work on Medicare for All.
Absolutely. We are at peoplesaction.org, and then we are also on Facebook and Twitter under PPLS Action.
And we'll post a link to that from our website. Thanks so much, Connie.
Thank you, Sonali.
My guest has been Connie Huynh, Healthcare for All Campaign Director with People's Action. We've been discussing People's Action's recent confrontation of the AMA over its lack of support for Medicare for All, or I should say its active propaganda effort against Medicare for All. I'm Sonali Kolhatkar. We're online at risingupwithsonali.com, where you can sign up for our daily newsletter. Also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at RU with Sonali. From KPFK Pacifica Radio, this is Rising Up with Sonali, and I'm your host, Sonali Kolhatkar. You can watch this program on Free Speech TV and listen to it on Pacifica radio stations and affiliates nationwide. The United States stands out from much of the rest of the world today in proliferating firearms at a rate that is breathtaking. The vocal demands of a gun-loving minority have led to tens of thousands of deaths a year. High-profile mass shootings, particularly on school campuses, lead to outpourings of thoughts and prayers, but little else. Members of Congress cower in the face of the powerful gun lobby and shrug shoulders in helplessness.